Good morning. I'm Ed Hartle. My pronouns are he, him, and you are very welcome here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto. We gather, our different paths entwined, to deepen our spiritual lives, nourishing connection, learning from each other, caring for each other, tending to our world. Masks are not required, but are strongly encouraged. We express our mutual respect by supporting each other's decisions about masking, distancing, and other health measures. Please do note the many events happening today, this week, and beyond that are listed in the order of service. If you're here in person and you have questions about Unitarian Universalism or this congregation, stop by the welcome table with the blue tablecloth and chat with Lisa Hellmans or some other friendly person from our membership team. You can leave your contact information if you want to receive notifications of upcoming events, and if this is the week you want to join the congregation, you can do that today also. And now we have an announcement by Sally Unger from the Campus Vision Task Force about today's town hall meeting. Sally?
Hi, I'm Sally Unger, co-chair of the Campus Vision Task Force, along with Randy Hellmans, who is the other co-chair. I hope you will all stay after the service for the Campus Vision Town Hall, where our new architect, Cynthia Munoz, will take us through the current state of the design. You can grab a cup of coffee after the service and a bagel to tide yourself over, and maybe bagels, more importantly, for your kids to tide them over. There will be childcare during the meeting, so please stay, whether you're here in person or on Zoom. Sorry, we don't have bagels for you on Zoom, or childcare, but I hope you will stay on Zoom. It's the same Zoom channel as we use for the service. So I'll see you after the service.
Thanks, Sally. And now, let us begin our service.
Our chalice lighting words this morning come from Tracy Johnson. If you have a chalice there at home with you, please light it along with me. We kindle our chalice flame this morning, awakening the fire of our ancestors in our hearts. Beacon of freedom held out the way to light the way, light of reason illuminating the path. Sparks of courage igniting our spirits, aglow with hope for all we endeavor to do together. Holy flame of times past, brighten this present moment that we may be the love that is our center and our foundation both. Blessed be. With our centering words each week, we draw upon the many, many sources of our living tradition. Today's words come from statesman Winston Churchill. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, we allow ourselves to arrive here fully. I'd like to invite all those who are young or young at heart to join me up on the colorful quilt for a story from Dr. Seuss called Yertle the Turtle. Good morning, my friends. Oh my goodness. So I have a question. Can you guys stack on top of each other? No? Maybe? Whoa, all right, well, okay, that's good. So we got one stack, but okay, I asked you that question for a reason, not to just have you jump on top of your brother. When we will find out. You want to join us on the rug? All right. So this is a story of Yertle the Turtle and other stories, but we're just doing Yertle the Turtle. Hello, welcome. If you are young, you are welcome to join us up front. So this story is Yertle the Turtle. On a far away island of Salamaslan, Yertle the Turtle was king of the pond. A nice little pond. It was clean, it was neat, the water was warm, and there was plenty to eat. The turtles had everything a turtle might need, and they were happy, quite happy indeed. They were until Yertle, the king of them all, decided the kingdom he ruled was too small. "I'm ruler," said Yertle, "of all that I see, but I don't see enough, and that's trouble with me. With the stone for a throne, I look down on my pond, but I cannot see the places beyond. This throne I sit on is too low. Down, it ought to be higher," he said with a frown. "If I could sit higher, how much greater I'd be. What a king, I'd be ruler of all that I'd see." So, Yertle the Turtle King lifted his hand, and Yertle the Turtle King said his command. He ordered 9 turtles to swim to his stone, and using these turtles, he built a new throne. He made each turtle stand on each other's back, and he piled them all up in a 9-turtle stack. And then Yertle climbed up, and he sat down on the pile. What a wonderful view! He could see most a mile. "Oh, mine," said Yertle. "Oh, the things I now rule. I'm king of a cow, and I'm king of a mule. I'm king of a house, and what's more beyond that, I'm king of a blueberry bush and a cat. Oh, I'm Yertle the Turtle. Oh, marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I can see." And all through the morning he sat up there high, saying over and over again, "A great king am I!" saying until long about noon. Then he heard a faint sigh. "What's that?" snapped the turtle, and he looked down to the stack, and at the very bottom he saw a turtle named Mac, just part of his throne. A plain little turtle looked up and said, "Beg your pardon, King Yertle, I've got pains in my back, my shoulders, and my knees. How much longer must we stand here, your majesty, please? What do you think Yertle said? Silence, yes. He does want to get taller. Yeah, so he said, silence, the king of the turtle barked back. I'm king and you're only a turtle named Mac. You stay in your place while I sit here and rule. I'm a king of a cow. I'm king of a mule. I'm king of a house. I'm a bush and a cat. But that isn't all. I'll do better than that. My throne shall be higher, his royal voice thundered. So pile up more turtles, about 200. Turtles! More turtles! He bellowed and braved, and the turtles all the way down to the pond were afraid. They trembled, they shook, but they came, they obeyed. From all over the pond, they came swimming by the dozens, whole families of turtles with uncles and cousins, and all of them stepped on the head of poor Mac. One after the other, they climbed up the stack. Then Yertle the turtle was perched up so high he could see 40 miles from his throne in the sky. Hooray, said Yertle. I'm king of the trees. I'm king of the birds. I'm king of the bees. I'm king of the butterflies, king of the air. Ah, me, what a throne, what a wonderful chair. I'm Yertle the turtle. Oh, marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see. But then, from below, in the great heavy stack, came a groan from a plain little turtle named Mac. Your Majesty, please, I do not like to complain, but down here we are feeling great pain. I know that you're up on top seeing great sights, but down here on the bottom, we too should have rights. We turtles can't stand it. Our shells will all crack. Besides, we need food. We're starving, cried Mac. You hush your mouth, howled the mighty King Yertle. You have no right to talk to the king, the world's highest turtle. I rule from the clouds, over the land, over the sea. There's nothing that's higher than me. But while he was shouting, he saw with surprise that the moon of the evening was starting to rise up over his head in the darkening skies. What's that? Shouted Yertle. What is that thing that dares to be higher than Yertle the king? I shall not allow it. I shall go higher still. I'll build my crown higher. I can and I will. I'll call some more turtles. I'll stack them to heaven. I need about 5,607. But as Yertle the turtle lifted his hand and started to order and give the command, the plain little turtle from the stack and below, the plain little turtle whose name was Mac, decided that he had enough, and that plain little lad got a little bit mad, and the plain little Mac did a plain little thing. He burped, and his burp shook the throne of the king. And Yertle the turtle, the king of the trees, the king of the air, and the birds and the bees, and the house of the bull and the cat and the mule. Well, that was the end of the turtle king's rule. For Yertle, the king of Salama Pond, for his high throne fell plunk straight into the pond. For today, great Yertle the turtle, the marvelous he, is king of the mud. That's all he can see. And the turtles, of course, all turtles should be free. And as turtles, and maybe all creatures should be. Thank you for listening to my story. Please join us now in singing number 368. Now let us sing in the gray hymnal, and then after the song, you guys are invited to go to religious education. All right, please rise in body or spirit, and it is number 368. all my young friends to attend summer Sunday school with Mr. Greg and Sarah in the lobby.
Last month, the UUA General Assembly revised Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, adopting a new set of guiding principles. But let us today once more affirm our principles in the language with which we are familiar, including the proposed 8th principle adopted by 225 congregations. The text is shown on screen. We, as a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Entering for spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Please join in singing Guide My Feet, number 348 in the Gray Hymnal. The words should be on screen and in the online order of service. There's an old Peanuts comic strip where Lucy Van Pelt throws up her arms and shouts, "I love humanity. It's people I can't stand." A paraphrase for many of us might be, "I love democracy. It's politics I can't stand." In her 2001 book on political decision-making, Deborah Stone wrote, "Inspired by a vague sense that reason is clean and politics is dirty, Americans yearn to replace politics with rational decision-making. Contemporary writings about politics, even those by political scientists, characterize it as chaotic, the ultimate maze or organized anarchy. Politics is messy, unpredictable, an obstacle course for policy and a hostile environment for policy analysis. Policy is potentially a sphere of rational analysis, objectivity, allegiance to truth and the pursuit of the well-being of society as a whole. Politics is the sphere of emotion and passion, irrationality, self-interest, short-sightedness, and raw power." Of course, politics is inescapable. People disagree, and it is through politics that those disagreements are worked out. For better or worse, politics is the path to policy. And I believe that politics and policy would be much, much worse without democracy. I think of democracy as the framework in which political engagement takes place. It sets boundaries and serves as a bulwark against authoritarianism, the repression of human rights, and the unchecked exercise of power, like Yurtle. One widely accepted definition sets forth these minimal requirements for democracy. I'll read these twice. Genuinely contested elections with full suffrage and the absence of massive fraud, combined with effective guarantees of civil liberties, including freedom of speech, assembly, and association. Again, that's genuinely contested elections with full suffrage and the absence of massive fraud, combined with effective guarantees of civil liberties, including freedom of speech, assembly, and association. So we have some basic ground rules, even if imperfectly realized in our imperfect world. I retired a while ago, but during my years as a Stanford professor, I worked for better policy in my own academic area, public education, especially educational testing. In addition to my research and writing, I co-authored policy briefs, occasionally offered expert testimony in court cases, talked with decision makers and with reporters, and served on far too many technical advisory committees, boards, panels, and study groups. I often had to and sometimes chose to work with people with whom I strongly disagreed. Many of those people, even those I disagreed with, I greatly respected. I saw that just about everyone was well-intentioned, trying to solve educational problems and to improve schooling practice and learning outcomes, even if those values sometimes conflicted with other goals and commitments. I learned that sometimes my technical arguments about proper test use, say, or test score accuracy simply didn't matter. The range of considerations in policy formation was vastly broader than the statistical matters I brought to the table. I learned that even well-crafted solutions to policy problems often had unexpected side effects and needed to be adjusted after a few years, and that sometimes everything could be suddenly swept away just because there was a new president in the White House. In short, I learned again and again the need to listen and learn, to compromise, to accept that there will be both wins and losses, to be patient, and to keep trying. We all know there's work to be done. Our denomination, our church, and many of us as individuals, probably just about all of us in one way or another, have worked to bring our democracy closer to our ideals. Besides supporting our favorite candidates and voting, think about postcards for UU the Vote, or our support and lobbying for the California Clean Money Campaign, or our presence at marches and peaceful demonstrations, or discussion groups like the Forum or White Folks Dismantling White Supremacy, where we try to become better informed, wiser, and more compassionate citizens of our democracy. I guess that's all politics, helping make democracy work better, and we're all called to help in one way or another. Thank you. Okay.
Our reading today comes from the book which this sermon is based on, Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny. A nationalist is not all the same thing as a patriot. A nationalist encourages us to be our worst and tells us that we are the best. A nationalist, although endlessly brooding on power, and what is happening in the real world. Nationalism is relative, since it's the only truth is resentment we feel when we contemplate others. As the novelist Daniel Keyes put it, nationalism has no universal values, aesthetic, or ethical principles. A patriot, by contrast, wants the nation to live up to its ideals, which means asking all of us to be our best selves. A patriot must be concerned with the real world, which is the only place their country can be loved and sustained. A patriot has universal values, standards by which they judged their nation, always wishing it well and wishing it could do better. So considering that quote, if our nation is a body, our body is sickened right now with the disease of tyranny brought on by those who would call themselves king or Caesar, insert dictator name here. The treatment for tyranny, however, for ourselves is unfortunately hindered by the trappings of ourselves and our tendency to look back to the era of the greatest generation with rose-colored glasses. For many think that our democratic heritage protects us from authoritarianism, that our heritage alone as a democratic country shields us, that the stories we tell each other about us being the city upon the hill which others look up to, it does not guarantee future democracy. As Timothy Snyder writes in On Tyranny, Americans today are no wiser than the Europeans who saw democracy yield to fascism, Nazism, or communism in the 20th century. So Timothy Snyder, he's an American scholar, a historian of Europe during the Second World War, and he wrote this book on tyranny as a response, not to the decades past of tyranny, but to our current moment in the present, which calls us to protect the fragile nature of democracy. In the book, Snyder uses his knowledge of pre- and post-World War Europe and Russia to provide examples on how democracies can survive the virus of tyranny. Like the founding fathers looked back on Aristotle and Plato for solutions to a government that would not succumb to the worst of human nature, Snyder takes more modern examples from Europe and the USSR to find out what we can do now. I highly recommend reading the book. It's very short. You can have it on hand. It's concise, it's thought-provoking, and there's even a comic book version for younger audiences. Though, if you're older, it's for you as well. While Snyder in the book, he has 20 points to defend democracy. I don't have 5 hours with y'all today, so we're going to talk about a couple of the points, which I think are very relevant right here and right now, 4 months before the election. Knowing this, and knowing that each seemingly tiny little act in this time could have a vast ripple effect, do not lose hope. Voting, phone banking, door knocking, donating, linking up with our awesome UU The Vote team, all this unglamorous behind-the-scenes work, the unsung work of democracy, is still an act that matters so much right now. So let's go back in time. We're going to go back about 5,000 years ago to the tomb of the first Egyptian pharaoh that united Lower and Upper Egypt. And I promise I have a point. So this is a baboon statue found in the tomb of that particular pharaoh. We don't know how this pharaoh's name was actually pronounced, only that the hieroglyphs for it are raging and catfish. So Namar, the raging catfish. Not a guy you'd want to piss off. But we're here to talk about baboons, not catfish. So in his tomb, there was this statue of a baboon found, and you can kind of see in the eye sockets, maybe perhaps there were gems there at some point. I imagine this little baboon watching over Namar's tomb for millennia, condemning those who would dare to break the king's eternal sleep, to curses and vileness. But I have to wonder how those Egyptians felt when they were starving, not able to eat, and they knew that there was a tomb full of baboons with gems just a couple feet from them. And would they care what a gem baboon had to say about it? So the first piece of advice that Snyder provides in his book is do not obey in advance. He writes, anticipatory obedience is a tragedy. What he's referring to is the automatic no-towing of those in charge when a new regime takes over. Much of fascism is bluster, noise. It's a lot of slogans yelled very loudly with violent threats about historical inevitability. This was a really key point for Hitler where he really shined, but his bravado alone did not guarantee his success. He needed others to propagate his message. He needed bad luck and the errors and mistakes of others along the way. And Snyder, he believes that American fascism is like this too. It's mostly bluff, and it's far from inevitable, particularly because fascism in our world right now displays itself primarily on the internet. And yet, he reminds us that we vote and live in the real world, where our voices have tangible results, unlike in a social media space full of bots and empty profiles. Therefore, resisting the urge to go along with things when they start is crucial, because the first acts of conformity cannot be reversed. One example is this. So this is Austria in early 1938 after Hitler annexed it, after the chancellor conceded the country to Hitler's will. Austrian Jews followed the lead of their chancellor and subjected the nation's Jews to their first taste of German obedience. They kidnapped Jews off the streets and forced them to scrub the roads to remove symbols of an independent Austria. And so you see all those folks on the side who are watching, all these nice folks who are not Nazis. So political theorist Hannah Arendt said, when German troops invaded the country and the gentile neighbors started to riot at Jewish homes, Austrian Jews began to commit suicide. We're all interconnected. What we do affects one another. And so if we have this anticipatory obedience, it prevents the pre-weaving of coalitions of people and groups that are stronger together than apart that would otherwise be impossible. So in a society and a regime where everybody is expected to lie flat and obey, be the nail that sticks out is what Snyder recommends. Humanity itself and your own humanity depend on it. Our inspiration here is a girl, an 18-year-old girl in 1940s German-occupied Warsaw. Her name was Teresa Perakova, and she was just finishing high school when her family's land were stolen by the Germans, forcing the family to move to Warsaw. There, the things got only worse for the family. Her father was arrested, her uncle died in battle, her two brothers were sent to POW camps, and the city itself was bombed, leading to the death of over 25,000 people. As German occupation deepened, the city began to build ghettos for Jews in town. And so Teresa was close to many Jews in Warsaw because of her brother's close relationship with a Jewish girl. And she noticed as the year went on, more and more people started drifting away, not associating with their Jewish friends, acquaintances. Telling no one, not even her family, Teresa snuck into the Warsaw Ghetto a dozen times in 1940 to bring much-needed medicine and food to the Jews she knew and the Jews she did not. By 1942, she had helped her brother's friend and family escape from the ghetto. Later on, in 1942, that summer, the Germans started deporting some 265,040 Jews to the death camp Treblinka, while killing another 10,380 Jews in the ghetto itself. Teresa's bravery saved one family from guaranteed peril. Decades later, she became a historian on the Holocaust, particularly focusing on the Warsaw Ghetto and those who aided Jews. But when she was asked to speak about her own life, she called her actions normal. From our perspective, from the long looking back on history, her actions seem exceptional. She stood out. So that's our next lesson, be an outstander just as Teresa was and as Great Britain was. In the hazy decades of myth-making after the Second World War, us Americans and Europeans have made a big deal about our nation's historical resistance to Hitler. But it's mindful to remember that well before the Second World War, many European countries had abandoned democracy for some form of authoritarianism. Seemingly not to be outdone, many influential Americans like Charles Lindbergh opposed the war by siding with the Nazis under the slogan, America First. So we have an example via Teresa, not a Charles. So I want to imagine you are in a doctor's office, and the good doctor holds this up and asks you, what's this? Maybe you will say, a bat. Or some of you might say, a moth, or a weird mask. Or, maybe if you are the bluntest, you might just say, that's a spilled bottle of ink. So these Rostros tests show different perspectives, but they're all based on a fundamental truth. They are ink on paper. In our world that's made for clicks and views, truth now is a casualty. The ink blot may look like a bat or a moth, but the media will proclaim it to be Godzilla to get you to stay on their page for just one more second. In a world where this is a default, being able to hear and grok what you do not want to hear is important for a society to thrive. Snyder argues that it's by that schemastic incantation at rallies, this constant repeating of myths and untruth through the media that constructs this non-existent counterworld that our brains can retreat into. And so we have to keep our plasticity, I can't say that word, in our brains active. We have to challenge what we hear, keep researching, keep investigating. For the counter world of tyranny to survive, it needs people to believe in it, to invest in its lies. So in 1992, Japanese film studio Ghibli created an unlikely hero for the audience who is a pig, not named Babe. Instead, this is a story of Porco Rosso. The main character is a former Air Force pilot who is now an anthropomorphic pig. Disillusioned by military and war, living in the interwar period in the Adriatic Sea, he has rejected the militaristic values of his past and now lives as a freelance bounty hunter, using his skills for personal gain rather than serving a nationalistic cause. What caused Porco to turn into a pig is never directly addressed in the film. Porco's line of better a pig than a fascist suggests that his resistance may have been the source. The transformation of human to animal when confronted with these tyrannical philosophies for those who give up truth for comfort and illusion is a common trope. So we have Eugene Ionesco wrote his 1959 play, Rhinoceros, on the same theme. He sought to understand why all his friends in the 1930s became Nazis, even though they did not start out as one. He said about 15 of us would get together and talk and try to find some argument opposing theirs. It was not easy. From time to time, one of our friends would say, I don't agree with them to be sure, but on certain points, nevertheless, I must admit, the Jews. And this was a symptom. 3 weeks later, the person would become a Nazi. He was caught in the mechanism. He accepted everything. He became a rhinoceros. Towards the end of the play, only 3 or 4 of us were resisting. So in this play, when the persons are exposed to propaganda, they turn into this great horned beast, the rhinoceros. And he hoped by highlighting the bizarreness of this propaganda his companions were drinking, that people would be so shocked that they would actually listen to what was being said, hoping to kind of shake them out of this counterworld of narratives and slogans. It feels now in this day and age that there are more and more rhinoceroses everywhere and more people aren't turning into pigs. But how do you tell a rhinoceros that he's a rhinoceros? You can't. He's going to just snort. Maybe she'll hit you with her horn, throw her head back, and proclaim they are a rhinoceros. Your goal now is to connect with others that still see this shared reality that we are all a part of. Can you turn a rhino into a pig? I don't know, but I know that history is not inevitable, and that I know that we are active players in this game of eons, and our era is not yet forfeit to the ghouls of fascism and tyranny. We belong to this world, and this world belongs to us, all of us. We cannot change the past, but we can change the future by actions now in the present. So please, my beloved one, protect each other, and do not obey in advance. Be an outstander, and believe and protect the truth. And know this too, that you are not alone in this endeavor. We're in this together for democracy, for our future, and for our humanity. Blessed be.
As part of the Free Church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority, in order that we shall remain free to govern ourselves. In addition to their annual pledges, each week our members and friends may choose to give an additional contribution as a public witness that we are and shall remain a free church. With our offering, we also assert that we are part of the interdependent web of existence, which is why 1 week per month your gift goes to the community or organization we've chosen as our justice partner. You can use cash or check, or the QR code, or text info in the order of service. The offering will now be given and received.
Thank you. Please join in singing There Is a River Flowing in My Soul. We're going to do the 3 verses. It's number 1007 in the teal hymnal, and the words are on screen and in your order of service. Our chalice extinguishing words today come from our own Reverend Amy Zucker-Morgenstern. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. Our chalice is now extinguished, but its flame continues to multiply in each of us and our lives. Is this better? Can you hear me now? All right, there we go. Round two. Try two. Please join us after the service for the town hall on campus vision, coffee and bagels. We hope to see you there. Now, if you're online, please unmute yourself, turn on your videos, and you can touch the screen virtually with your hands on either side while we say our benediction together. So if you are in the main hall, you can reach out and hold hands if you and the person next to you are comfortable with that, or to show that you're connected in spirit, you can cross your hands over your heart. All right, let us say the benediction together. Go out into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Speak love with word and deed. Honor all